to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. A series of conversations with the technicians, leaders, engineers, and innovators critical to ensuring power reliability, safety, education, and innovation. We discuss the many facets of the power industry with the unsung heroes who power the world in the 21st century. Sponsored by Southern Staffing Group, we support your power industry talent acquisition efforts. If it involves power, we have you covered. Plug in and join our host, Micah Clay, veteran, entrepreneur, and power enthusiast, as we delve into the world of power.
Welcome back to the Power Relay with Micah Clay, where we dig into the people, strategy, and structural shifts shaping the power industry. Today's discussion centers around electrical safety, but not in the traditional compliance sense. We are going deeper into the psychology of risk, the technical blind spots inside organizations, and the dangerous illusion that zero incidents equals true safety. Joining me today is Paul Decker, Chief Executive Officer of Guidant Power. Paul brings more than 25 years of leadership experience in industrial technology companies. He previously served as CEO of ABP Induction, a global metallurgical equipment supplier that he carved out from ABB in 5 countries, expanded into 9 countries before being acquired by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. He holds a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Michigan and an MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. We've got several topics to discuss with Paul today. First, he is a passionate advocate for electrical safety, but not from the rules and regulations perspective. He's all about leadership's role in creating successful cultures. In fact, he recently authored an article in the NITA World Journal and presented at an IEEE electrical safety workshop on the topic of From Luck to Leadership, Why Zero Incidents May Be the Greatest Risk, which outlines a framework that challenges how organizations think about electrical safety and why many companies may be more lucky than safe. Paul, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and do us a quick introduction. We had a great conversation with your team here, I think probably 2-3 months back. You and I got to break bread at Power Test. That was fantastic. We enjoyed hanging out with you. Ashley thoroughly enjoyed hanging out with you. And of course, everybody else that was there. It was a great event. But before rambling on here, can you give our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Well, Micah, thanks. It's great to spend some time with you after knowing you for quite some time. But to meet you in person and meet Ashley was really great at Power Test. And it was a terrific event. I always get energized by going there and meeting really the cream of the crop in the electrical testing and technology from around the country. My background, I'd say I'm an engineer by personality. I happen to have a degree in mechanical engineering. It's ironic that I've spent most of my career in electrical related products, starting with I was president of a company called MST Analytics. We sold life safety systems for use in semiconductor manufacturing. We used electrochemical sensors to detect trace amounts of toxic gases, and then like a fire alarm would shut down. So it's interesting for the electrical people. Like on one hand, our alarm signal in one of those was as low as 20 nanoamps. And then subsequently, later in my career at ABP Induction, we made huge metallurgical furnaces using the principle of induction. So a big frequency converter, we take 50 or 60 hertz and convert it to either thousands or hundreds, depending what we were doing. But we'd go up to 42 megawatt converters was our biggest. It would melt 65 tons in an hour. So from 20 nanoamps to thousands and thousands of amps on parallel circuits really ran the gamut. If you saw my grades in my electrical engineering electives, you'd really giggle because I have no idea how I ended up here. They were not very impressive, but somehow I've been here, and it's been really a terrific journey for me. It's been a little bit of a labor of love as well. In 2012, Micah, my life changed when I woke up one morning and I had in my email some surveillance video of one of our young commissioning engineers by the name of Dimitri approaching an arcing induction furnace in a critical failure mode when he should have been running away. And moments later, that furnace erupted, showering the work area with over a ton of molten steel. Miraculously, Dmitry escaped unharmed from that explosion in an accident that would typically be fatal, if not immediately within days. It was an extraordinarily lucky day. He got to go home, and a young man who had entrusted his career to our company didn't perish. But it was extraordinarily and painfully clear that we hadn't trained him to safely perform his job. And that started for me a safety journey that began, albeit extraordinarily clumsily, but knowing we had to do something different, and what we had been doing wouldn't work or continue to work. And we had been lucky, not safe. Fast forward to today, and over those subsequent years, I'd say I've really learned two important lessons about that. First was we were not alone. Electricity is a mystery to most people in the world. And as a result, employees get exposed to electrical dangers unknowingly every day of every week all around the world because neither they nor their bosses understand them well enough to mitigate them. And the second lesson I learned is that everything we did to make our company safer made our company better. The skills necessary to create a safe environment are the same ones to create a great, successful, productive environment. And so what's good for safety is good for business. And so that's what the Are You Lucky or Safe project that you mentioned earlier, and we produced a video called From Luck to Leadership, Why Zero Incidents May Be Your Greatest Risk, is really about that journey, Micah.
No, completely understand. And so you saw a lot of immediate impacts coming out of that. Did you do data studies, kind of quantify the metrics? What's kind of leading the, obviously it makes sense logically, it's safety, it's very important. But, as far as kind of like showing the proof in the pudding, what kind of metrics did you dig in for that? And what was kind of the study case or the case study for it, if you will?
It's extraordinarily hard to use data on low frequency, high consequence
Concur.
events. Todd Conklin, who I think is really a forward-thinking person in this area in safety, he talks about safety is not the absence of incidents. Safety is the presence of capacity, the capacity to identify and mitigate risks. And that capacity really needs to live as close to the source of the risk as possible. And so it's really about empowering your teams, and particularly the people who are the closest to the risks, with the tools, with the support to execute their job professionally and safely. So that's obviously emphasizing the right to stop work. It's giving them the tools, engineering tools or administrative procedures to avoid risk rather than have to mitigate it. PPE is the last thing you want to do.
Absolutely.
Right. And so having, there was a number of topics that we initiated and addressed, and they continue over the years. But, some examples were, we built in controls to our equipment. There's, for example, we built in enthalpy control. Like there's a certain amount of energy that converts a certain weight of material to liquid. And if you go over that, you superheated it. So right. We know the weight, we know the amount of energy we're putting in. We could create that. We could start putting hazards in the control systems for the furnaces that would say there's something wrong. It's taking more energy than it should, which would indicate that there's some kind of a failure mode, a crust forming or a bridge, what they call in the foundry industry, and to alert people to that. There's grounding issues. There were all sorts of what the Japanese would say poke yoka, or error proofing, that we could put into those controls, and we did. It made our product a stronger product for it.
A lot of that goes into the Kaizen workflows that you see with Toyota and things. And then it's funny you mentioned that, having the structure and getting it down to the lowest levels. So in the military, I had 23 years of service doing that. And we have what's called operational risk management that was drilled down to the youngest, most junior enlisted person on the staff. And it was very much matrix driven, and it was covered in every port entry exit brief before every refueling. And it was really to show and empower those individuals that need to be able to stop work, that are in the actual day-to-day operations in critical events such as refueling at sea and things like that, or just in general driving the ship, and really poking, really trying to enforce that that safety culture is really what it is. And, even then, and I grew up through the ranks in the military, it's very hard to get that junior, full of testosterone individual to kind of buy in and think they're not a cowboy. That's not, not going to go off. So definitely dealt with those struggles, Paul, and definitely, see a lot of value from that perspective.
It starts with the leader. The leaders, are you really open to that? Is a leader really open to stopping work? What's the body language? What actually happens when that occurs? Are you celebrating that, or are you questioning it? Really, in my opinion, leadership sets the tone for it. And
no, couldn't agree more. And it needs to be pervasive throughout the organization. I mean, you can have somebody at the CEO level, and if they're not in touch with the body of the organization, it's still going to fall short, right? Because it's just falling on deaf ears. And now you have to kind of really ingrain that culture, or at least through my lens, it seems to be the way that works the best or most practical.
Yeah.
And so kind of digging in, I know the incident with the furnace was kind of the driver. Root cause analysis. What was the ultimate, so the incident, very unfortunate that happened, but it ultimately superheated and became what it was for a reason. What did the root cause analysis come out from that?
Well, I mean, that's a classic case of where you have moisture from the cooling system getting through the refractory and underneath the material, and as it turns into steam, it expands and explodes. That's what the root cause of that was, and you can see it in the video. And you can see as he walks up to it that there's already a leak. You can see water on the floor. That's really that is a runaway signal.
Understood. And so that's one of those critical visual indicators he should have had. Said, "Hey, water, inevitable. Get the hell out of the way." Basically.
Yeah, but like happens so frequently, people want to save equipment. Mm-hmm. There were other people nearby. It always is with good intentions.
It is. I agree.
It's always good intentions. It's not, but any case, we're very fortunate in that particular case.
No, absolutely. They couldn't have had better outcomes from that. And it was definitely a pivotal shift in your equation, and kind of what drives you now today, I would say, is a pretty good underlying based on our interactions together anyway, Paul.
Well, I do think it's very important. I think in the electrical industry, where talent is at such a shortage, as you know, and why you're employed the way you are, you need good people. If you don't have a strong safety culture, you don't have a company where these talented individuals feel they are able to move forward in their lives, but also to do so in a way that's safe, and that they feel supported and backed up with the equipment that they need to do it safely, that you won't attract top talent.
No, you won't. And it doesn't make the news often enough, but I hear countless incidents. I was just on the phone the other day with a candidate who couldn't call me back that day because one of his friends had taken a medium voltage shot. And it's just it's more prevalent than people let on. And it's one of the reasons that we inevitably do an episode on safety every 3 to 4, because it's that important to me from that perspective, and making sure the industry is doing it to that point. And then that's not even touching on all the liabilities that come along with one of those things that happens, and the litigation and everything else that can come down in addition to lost output, and having supply chain effects depending on the situation. So truly impactful stuff for sure.
Well, putting it in perspective, Micah, we were working with an insurance company a little over a year ago, and they have a global manufacturer. The finding from the insurance underwriter was they did not have an adequate electrical maintenance program. The loss expectancy from that was $319 million. Only 19 was casualty or human risk. The 300 was property and loss in business interruption. When, as we know, lead times are so long that when you lose a critical piece of equipment, it can take weeks and weeks and weeks, which impacts supply chains and revenue and has tremendous consequential damages. So That's one reason why you see the insurance companies leaning more into IR thermography, infrared thermography, leaning more into the 70B, the EMPs,
I agree.
because the cost of having an event is so consequential. Unfortunately, the real cost is not the people; it's the business interruption.
And usually a lot of this,
Financial point of
yes,
view.
concur.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of the decisions we're driven by is financial, in addition to taking care of the human capital side of it, which are the people, which is the most important part. But liabilities, a lot of people don't realize, is a lot of industries are driven around that. I think a primary example would be right now the lack of shipping and oil coming out. Like, that is all driven by insurance underwriting. They won't cover the loads. It's much applicable regardless of the vertical. So a lot of that all comes down to underwriting is really what it comes in managing those costs and expectations. And that drives a lot of the regulation that we see in the space as well, to your point. So great insights there. And then kind of getting us on track here, Paul. So I talked with your team, Roselle, BCH Safety, and Monroe Infrared, which were your initial partner businesses. And we often hear crappy comments about private equity, especially in our space, I think, due to the fact that, every time you turn it around, another company is being bought. And I was very intrigued, and this is kind of touching on it. I don't want to come across as like salesy or anything, but I just think your approach and the way you're building your portfolio and things are just extremely awesome in your outreach and everything. Your leadership approach seemed different from most of the ones. And like I said, I hate to say, I talk to tons of equity groups all the time, met with 2 last week just to shoot the breeze, but the approach is different. So can you kind of categorize that? And like I said, what's Guidance ultimate outcome? What are you trying to achieve there? How you getting there? What are you looking for and things like that before we get into the root of safety?
Sure. Well, I mean, Guide and Power, our strategy is in our name. When one possesses knowledge of something that's unique like electricity, there comes responsibility. And our brand promise, what we try to convey is to our customers who may or may not understand electricity as well as we do, we are trying to be a guide on their electrical journey. For Guide and Power, that means we're closer to an engineering company than a test or a maintenance company. We do infrared thermography. We do power studies. We do electrical engineering. We do training. We also sell infrared products. We also, interestingly, have an aerial division that does close visual inspection of transmission distribution lines. But all of our products are around electrical reliability and safety. And that's what we're trying to build. And so we say our vision is to build safer, more productive workplaces. And that goes back really to my lesson number 2, which I shared with you earlier, which is they go hand in hand. There is no separating reliability, productivity, safety. They all go hand in hand. And so that's really our vision. Maybe one of the things that I've learned over the years is the private equity firms are responsible for their investors' money. And their investors like to cycle their money typically on a 5 or 6 year cycle so they can reinvest it. That is the nature of the beast, and that is their job to do that.
100%.
Now, if you try to draw that into the strategy of the firm, I think that you will underperform, because the only person who really cares about that are the limited partners in the private equity firm. But for the employees and the customers, that's unsettling for them. So we need to have a North Star, and the North Star is the safer, more productive workplace, to become the preferred supplier of electrical safety, reliability, and training to North America's leading companies. And just like if mortgage rates go down, you might refinance your house. We will refinance Guide and Power. But if we do a good job, we can earn the right to continue doing what we're doing for longer and longer, and on the mission that we're on with the team that we're on. And that's really the goal. So we try to have a North Star that goes way into the future so that we can create a career for people. As long as people feel they're moving forward in their lives and we're contributing to that forward progress while they're a part of our company, and that they feel they can operate safely and with the necessary support, then we will retain people even in a very, very competitive industry. And so far, we've been pretty fortunate in that regard.
It's amazing. You got to give growth opportunities, education opportunities, and fairly compensate, and then take some of the risk off the table from longevity, stability, and things like that. And people stick around. It's crazy. It's not some magical formula. It's just doing business the right way.
It's really simple. It's walking a mile in their shoes, and that's
exactly.
That is the hardest part for some executives who may not have been around the industry or. You have to understand what it's like to be in a dirty facility, opening a panel that you're
100%.
You're not sure has it been. Should you even open the panel? Like the decisions that these folks have to make every day, and we have to arm them and educate them to make the safe decision is really our job. So they don't feel that they're stuck between a boss who's expecting them to do something unsafe.
Exactly.
Just for the name of making a buck.
And we see it's prevalent out there. A lot of the times the mission just becomes the driver. And if that culture is not embedded, it's just that's not going to take the action. They'll do whatever it takes to get the objective outcome, or
right.
The outcome of the objective by necessarily worried about safety. So I agree. It's definitely a culture of both excellence and, of course, safety being part of that. So definitely interesting stuff. And then, so we talked about it in the intro, the luck model. You've written an article for Nita World as well, and it's basically showing the statistics. And that's kind of where I was kind of going to statistically looking. And I know you have some stats because of the low probability, but seeing the power or the distribution of number of employees to, kind of seeing the math there to get to the statistical odds of an incident. How dangerous is it when leaders mistake that statistical probability that you kind of cover in that arch for proof of safety?
Oh, it can be very dangerous. It's just a question of time when that occurs. But maybe we should talk a little bit about that in more detail. So, that was clearly me in 2012. I was surrounded by electrical engineers. We bought this business from ABB. I presumed they knew how to run a safety system. And I was a mechanical engineer who didn't understand electricity very well, and so was certainly intimidated. Those are all reasons why people stay quiet on a topic.
I agree.
No one wants to raise their hand and feel stupid, or start a discussion about something that they're not comfortable with. So there's a lot of reasons why people stay quiet. But let's talk about the statistics. So what occurred to me as I tried to process this, are you lucky or safe, was, well, let's take a look at the data for different size companies, and let's look at SIF, serious incidents and fatalities. Mm-hmm. So what we described as either more than a day away from work or fatality.
Okay.
And based on company size, let's look at the incidents, and let's make a calculator that says, I'm a 500-person company. I've gone 20 years without an incident. What's the chance that that's luck?
Right.
And the chance is pretty darn high. 20 years is getting lower, but a 500-person company will easily go a decade. 90% chance they'll go a decade, without it. And so now comes human nature, because we as humans have evolved to discount risks that we're not familiar with.
That and the lizard brain, right? Like the lizard brain gets a say too. Humans are inherently lazy for the most part. When we can cut a corner, we'll cut a corner.
It's no different than an AI data center in some respects, right? We process information in critical thinking mode, which consumes a lot of energy. Or if there's things that we've learned, it goes into more of an autonomous mode, like riding a bicycle or driving. And we look for patterns and try to put them into autonomous mode. And so when we don't feel there's a risk, or we're not aware of anyone, recency bias or proximity bias, if we're not aware of anyone we know that's had an issue, we discount it.
Yep.
But the fact is the probability of occurring is the same today as it is tomorrow, as it is in 5 years, and eventually the luck will run out. And
it's
so
like playing safety roulette.
You're playing safety roulette. Yeah, we played around with graphics of this, and one of them was a big roulette wheel and putting a CEO having to slide an employee picture into one slot every day, and roll it. Like that's really what you're talking about. When you look at it statistically and say electrical injuries account for 0.12% of lost time incidents, no one will ever notice it. But 6% of workplace fatalities, Micah. Mm-hmm. So you don't ever think about it because it's not showing up in your graph. But when you have one, it's going to be severe and it's going to rock your world as an executive. So we built it. So what we basically said was, all right, if we want to better educate senior executives about these low frequency risks, and one of my passions is how can we extend it into the smaller companies that don't have access to electrical safety experts, where a lot of testing companies and contractors work. How can we help them appreciate this? And in order to do that, we have to enable the people who have the most invested. And that would be local champions, or maybe the safety manager in a 300-person company who doesn't know a lot about electricity, but has a vested interest in the success of that company.
Right.
And knows they need to do something, but isn't confident enough. So the Are You Lucky or Safe website, the letter areyouluckyOrSafe.com, we built as it's sponsored by Guidant, but we tried to build it as a non-commercial for the benefit of the world site. It is a place where champions can go to learn how to make those arguments.
Love that.
And in fact, we've enabled the latest AI technology, so you can interact with our chatbot, collect a little bit of information. And what it does is it creates a 5-minute video with an intro by me, and then it goes through our 3 models. One is the what we call the luck model. What is the probability that your long period of 0 incidents is luck or due to your safety processes? And it's usually a high percentage of luck. We then take people through the consequence model. And for that, we try to depict what an incident looks like. Think of it as cascading blast radii around an incident that starts with the human cost, which is immediate and clear, and then operational, and then legal, and then reputational, and you lose people and customers. And what really happens to executives is you thought you were driving and controlling your future, and guess what? When that happens, you go into a spiral of damage control, and you're not driving your agenda. So those are nice because they appeal to their intelligence, they appeal to their wallet, but you've got to make it urgent. And that doesn't apply enough urgency because we have evolved to avoid those kind of risks. So the third part is the emotional model, right? The impact model. And here, are you old enough to remember the movie Jaws?
I am.
Well, if you remember the movie Jaws, when that came out, do you know how many people that scared out of the water? Do you remember?
It was a lot. I do recall it. People were deathly afraid of going into the water because of Jaws.
I grew up in Michigan, and it's all fresh water, and people stayed out of the water. So that's the power of appealing to emotion. But when you do that, you have to couple it with a plan, and that is where a testing business or a safety business comes along. Because if you're going to scare an executive into doing something, they have to know there's a clear path out. Otherwise, you get, it's not a responsible way to do that. So the impact model, and I've got to thank Jason Brosen from Tyndale for this because he shared all the footage of his arc flash accident. And so in this vignette, we show the incident, the impact of an arc flash, and we show some of the graphic detail from his accident. We show the consequences on the business and on the CEO, and the CEO in a deposition, and a CEO having his emails read, and a CEO being asked about does he have arc flash labels on their panels, and then him recognizing and coming out of it and saying, learn from me, this is how we can do it. And it's kind of the crescendo and build it up and, call someone who knows and takes you on this. But the idea is, so this little vignette that we use using AI video is personalized to the company, the location, the CEO's name, takes them through the luck model, the consequence model, the impact model. So it's a tool a local champion can use to advocate for safety at their company.
Love that. No, I think that's very good. And you said that one's free to the public. Check it out. Build your video.
Yeah.
And go from there. Now,
Are you lucky or safe? The letter R, letter U.
Yes, sir.
LuckyOrSafe.com.
LuckyOrSafe.com. And so this is one that kind of just came about in my head. So you've lived these experiences, and I think the best teachers or teachers of anything, substantial like that in life are those who've experienced it. So you were the CEO. How did that impact you personally, Paul? It had to have been hair pulling. I mean, you had to have felt the guilt aspect because it was on your watch. Watching that young man, I'm sure it weighed heavily on it. What about the personal impacts to you? How did it impact you
Well, I mean,
living that? And how did that guide you today, I guess?
I mean, thankfully, I feel extraordinarily grateful because nothing happened. It was not a death, which it easily could have been. So I've just tried to take that gratitude and say, I treat that as a gift. That day was a gift for me. And how many other senior executives can I share that with? And how much impact can I have? And that's part of the reason why I'm at Guide & Power. At this stage of my career, there's two things I'm really passionate about. One is advocating and educating, and I can help senior executives with this. The second is, this stage of my career, my responsibility is developing the next generation of leaders. And so, trying to build a leadership team and instill some of the lessons I've learned. I've learned a lot from our younger folks too, but to try to share some of these experiences and really build a leadership team that can take guidance, well in the future and beyond me. And that's both our direct hires, but also the people that we partner with who you interviewed, for example, who become, we acquire and they become principals and equity holders in Guide & Power going forward.
No, I think that in like I said, I'm not trying to plug Guide and all that because we're talking on electrical safety and leadership, but I do find that model very, very cool that a lot of folks, and we talked about it earlier, the arbitrage opportunity of being a recruiter in the space is, equity came in, it's an acquisition. Now I'm here to pick up all the techs that are ready to jump ship. It's typically how it works out, and gives us great reason to kind of follow the movements in the space. And everybody's like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'm like, you have to, because you got to know where the movements are coming from. So kind of doing that stuff. Man, sorry, Paul, I forgot where I was going with it. So I guess that's kind of off track there. But kind of touching on where you came from in that. So did you actually experience the litigation? What were the impacts?
No, I didn't have that.
Really?
No, I mean, because he was fine. That's what I mean. Are you lucky or safe? Luck to leadership is my journey. I went from luck to trying to take a leadership position. But I can tell you, Micah, we have 35 techs in the field every day. There's not a day I don't wake up, white knuckled. And we just made, and I this is really a plug for our company and our owners, but we just pulled our entire field team out of the field for a week of training awesome. Last week. 3 full days of safety training. And on basic 70E, on human factors, on specific techniques, but also on being the trusted guide on the journey. Like, what does that mean? When a tech goes into the field, they're representing themselves, they're representing their trade, they're representing the company, and that comes with responsibility. But to pull those guys out of the field is a very serious financial investment.
Absolutely is. That is no small undertaking.
And so, this is a plug for, it's a plug for our financial backer who is all in on that for all the right reasons. And maybe you started asking me how I got involved in this, and maybe I should touch on that. But someone who is an investor with them introduced me to the team that was looking at making an investment in this space, and I was passionate about it. And it started maybe as a director, and then it became the CEO role, which I'm really happy about. But when they first approached me, man, my shields were up, and I was like, I'd seen this story before.
Exactly.
I don't need this. I went out to dinner with a great friend of mine who I've known for 25 years, and he said to me, Paul, what's your problem, dude? You've been trying to do this with one hand tied behind your back for 25 years.
Right.
Why don't you listen to them? And I came home and I told my wife, Gretchen, Steve just kicked my butt. I have to open my ears here. I think I have to give these guys a chance because, as we all know, when we make generalizations about anybody, doesn't matter if it's from the North or the South or you're American League or National League or whatever, you're going to make mistakes.
Yep.
And so I did. I gave them a listen. I really learned more about their model and their approach, and I came away really, really impressed with Shore Capital, and decided that for me, the biggest risk is that an investor hijacks
Exactly.
my leadership and character for a period of time and then, misuses it. And I talked to people with Shore, I talked to other leaders and got a lot of confidence that was not their way of working. And so I got comfortable, and we're now 2 years in, and I can tell you they have lived up to absolutely everything and more that they promised. So I'm, and I wouldn't say that if they didn't, but
Right.
They have. So and leaning into something like Safety Week, that's a huge investment. And to me, the facts
massive.
speak for themselves on that.
Its actions always speak louder than words. So couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's a great ground story. And I'd actually, even before we had met, I'd actually heard of Shore. Obviously, like I said, I'm talking with everybody and everything and trying to figure out who's buying what and when and how. And had heard of Shore in the equation and had heard good things. And then, of course, ran across you for our initial intros. And and here we are today. So if I thought you were a dirtbag, well, you wouldn't be on. So. Well, so I do want to make sure that we're kind of encompassing like some safety lessons here. Yep. Obviously, you come from an executive background. What is the hardest thing for an executive to wrap their head around when it comes to electrical or electrical specifically? And I already know the outcome here, but I think it's probably you can't see it more than anything would probably be the entering argument. Or what is hard for execs to understand about electrical?
Well, I think it's, you can see a machine, a stamping press. You can see you don't want to put your hands there. And it's pretty darn intuitive. You can see that with other. So electricity is clearly one because you don't see it. What makes an electrical distribution system work, what makes a breaker work, is that it's exercised. And so many are never exercised. And so they are electromechanical mechanism, which after 5 or 10 years is not going to respond
right
the way one thinks. But it's just that box in the corner that never causes them any problem. And so it's hard to imagine that I think that's just the nature of it. And it's
out of sight, out of mind, basically.
It's no different than buying cyber insurance. Right? It's going to happen to someone else. It's not going to happen to us until it does. Right. And then you're happy you have it. But I just think it's out of sight, out of mind. What I try to do is encourage that, and what we do in our company is what makes us a safe company should make us a great company. And there's no difference. So you get that as a byproduct for doing the right thing. You do PM on your equipment. You're doing it on your machinery. Why wouldn't you do it on your distribution system? You're going to do an arc flash evaluation. Why don't you test the breakers? 70B suggests you should do an infrared, annually. That makes perfect sense. Do an infrared inspection of your equipment annually and save yourself a fire. I mean, it's just
seems common sense, but not always common.
It's common sense. It can be budget tough for smaller companies, but I understand that. But it's
I think more than anything, it's mainly ignorance. I would say, more than anything. And I see it with some of the smaller companies that we have conversations with, and unless they come from the industry, obviously that's a large spectrum of what we cover. But having played at small family offices in the past and things like that, and having a diversity of experience, typically it comes down to the ignorance around it. As part of your construct in the executive to executive talks, and a lot of that comes with education. So do you talk code standards? What's the bridge, the quickest way?
I think
obviously video is good, but
I presented at IEEE last week at the Electrical Safety Workshop, which has been, that's 20 some odd year, maybe more than that. And it is the leading experts on codes and engineers and PhDs. They have forgotten more than I will ever know about that. But I do feel like that industry, the safety industry, sits on a pedestal. And that pedestal is funded by senior executives who think safety is a strategic priority, and they provide the funding for the equipment and the staffing to bring it to life. And so I just have felt that my contribution is more in the softer areas. It's educating senior executives about these risks, why preempting them is great for your business and ameliorates the risk at the same time, but it's really great for your business. It's going to help you attract and retain talent. It's going to give you an edge in the marketplace. It's going to make your customers happier. You'll have lower absenteeism. You'll have, it just is a very virtuous cycle if you lean into the principles that will make a company safe and more productive.
No, couldn't agree with you more. Are you getting any negative feedback in your outreach to anybody out in the community? I know it takes a million kinds to make the world go round, and I see them all in recruitment. So it's been pretty well received. You have any horror stories to share, and kind of like where you can see gaps without naming names or anything like that? And from that perspective, or has it all been pretty good so far?
We really don't. But and we've had a couple examples of where we've pulled people out of facilities because we just didn't feel they could do it safely. And I've done that. I did after the 2012 incident. We had a customer in the U.S. that had a very unsafe foundry, and our engineers did not want to work there, and we didn't want them working there. We tried to convince the general manager. When he didn't respond, I called the group VP in New York. It was a publicly listed company, and just said, "You're going to have a severe. We may lose all the business. That's okay. Right. I don't want you to have a fatality at this facility, and you need to know what's going on with it." And he was extraordinarily grateful. We did that. They ended up closing that facility, which they should have.
Right.
Because it was really unsafe and not a pleasant place to work. But, back to actions are louder than words. Safety is not a poster. Safety is what you do, and how you live and operate in the business. And we're flawed humans, all of us, and we do the best we can. And you just hope that you do well enough for your team, everything possible that they can be successful.
No, couldn't agree with you more, Paul. It's all about what helps you lay your head down at the end of the day and be able to sleep okay is the way I kind of look at it and try to do right by everybody. So I couldn't agree with you more from that perspective. And we touched on like the emotional model, the consequence model, and things like that, kind of pertaining to that. In terms of human toll from the consequent model, operational disruption, executive accountability. In real world terms, what is a single serious electrical event? I know we kind of talked through yours. It sounded like you got lucky on the outcomes. And we talked to the very, very large example you gave earlier about the massive foundry. What is kind of like the in between there, the averages? You already have those numbers kind of in mind?
I really don't. And I think it's hard to I think OSHA or someone at one point had put a number on that.
I thought so. I remember seeing
years
something.
ago. And I'm sorry, Mike, I don't have that at my fingertips. But I can tell you it's much greater than than it seems, because if you start peeling the layers back, you first of all have injuries.
Yep.
Right, and so you have some lost work. You have equipment that needs to be repaired. You have downtime. There's a good chance you're going to lose some customers or miss some deliveries. So depending how sticky your business is, you do that. You're likely to, if you're in the electrical industry, services industry, your ratings on IS Net World and all those will go down. When I've talked to people at some of the major OEMs, and there's been unfortunately fatalities there over the years, and it's usually a 3-year period, and you lose many of your largest customers. So you end up laying people off because you don't have work for them, potentially. And so it's really a horrible circumstance. I'm sorry, I can't put an average.
No, you're fine. I was just kind of curious, knowing, the stats. I know you mentioned Jason Brosen earlier. He'd been on the podcast as well and had shared, and it was a pretty sizable amount to the tune. I want to say it was like $10 million was the overarching cost of just that one arc flash incident. For anybody that's not aware, hasn't seen it, highly recommend giving Jason Rosen a follow over there. He's always putting out great content around that stuff. But the situation was he went to a hotel doing switchgear maintenance stuff he'd seen 1,000 times before. Master electrician managed to get his tool on the bus, basically arced it. And that was to the tune of millions again of replacement cost and litigation and liability. It was at a hotel, like we said. So kind of dealing with all the outcomes from that. And it was pretty substantial from that point. So and what should be what I would perceive to be a fairly isolated incident in a utility, basically a substantially sized utility closet with switchgear in it, and yet still had an impact to that, monetary extent is pretty wild to think about, if you think. So Definitely interesting stuff from that. So didn't mean to catch you off guard on that one,
No,
Paul.
no, it's good. It's a great question. I did get it, in the Q&A from the ESW presentation, there was really, could you do a better job on the costs and helping create the costs? And I did get some information from one of the participants about a model that either the DOE or someone had put together, like 26 categories of cost from a serious electrical incident. And we've covered the big ones. I mean, you know what they are.
Nope, absolutely on that side. So from let's see here, from a technical operations standpoint, what are the most common blind spots? So this is kind of touching more to the small, medium-sized business. We've already kind of highlighted. Like I said, I've talked to a spectrum of these individuals. Some have it locked on a little better than others, as I know you have. What are some of the common pitfalls you see to folks at that small, mainly not the big players that already have established safety programs, small to mid-cap, and how do they get started?
It's just they don't even have awareness about it. I mean, they don't know what an arc flash is. And usually it's a small facility that's full of dust or something, and so the switchgear and everything is covered in something, and you have no idea what's inside of it. The place to start is usually their insurance companies, and so we do a lot of work with insurance brokers, risk managers, trying to educate risk managers.
That makes sense.
They don't need to be electrical experts, but we give them tools that you can think about, like the cockroach. You see one cockroach, there's always more behind the wall.
Right.
It's a red flag list. What they can look for and see, that they don't need to be trained experts, but if they see some of these, they've got a pretty good idea. And we try to, when they show up on a site, they may have 2 or 3 hours to do a safety audit for a complete site. And most of them, just like if you get a degree in occupational safety, the chances that you've had much electrical background is pretty small. So They often will stay away from that topic. What we're trying to say is, wait a minute, we get it. But if you look at the chance of fire, if you look at the chance of serious business interruption, it's a major risk.
Huge.
And as you walk in these facilities and you walk past the people in shipping, receiving, or that are operating the machine, remembering 74% of people who die in electrical accidents are not electrical workers. They're innocent bystanders. And so, look in their eyes as you walk through there, and take the time to just take, as you walk through the facility, to look at our checklist for electrical red flags, so you can start the discussion. And then, we're happy to help if we can.
No, that is awesome. And so you kind of highlighted on some stuff there, the dust-coated switchgear lineups and things over there, right? How much, so this kind of brings up the topic of electrical reliability versus electrical safety in my mind,
Sure.
Right? So what's the delta there? Can you break that down?
Well, I don't think there's much of a delta. I mean, I don't think that I referred to it earlier. Your breaker doesn't work unless it's maintained.
Right.
And if you have a facility that's full of conductive dust, you're going to have a potential arc flash,
Right.
much sooner. So I think that they do go. I think they really do go hand in hand. And so it's natural that 70B is starting to pick up some momentum.
Yes.
But to companies that knew that already, they've been testing breakers for years so it's nothing new. But it is good that we start putting it in a structure like 70B and start making people accountable for it.
It always, again, liability is driving the picture, drives the regulation. We're seeing an uptick. Obviously, data centers. There's much more electrical demand right now than I think we've seen in previous generations, and inevitably, you got to have more regulations to address that. Is kind of the way I see it. And then I was kind of going with the reliability versus safety as like the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease. So if this thing is doing its job in the background, no harm, no foul. We just don't need to mess with it. And I think that's probably a lot of the driving force between the lack of maintenance on that. It's like, it works. The electricity's coming in. You don't have to mess with it until it doesn't, is kind of what it comes down to from that perspective.
Michael, we have a very, very sophisticated global company that you'd all recognize that's an industry leader. And we were doing an update, and on the main breaker, the relay was unprogrammed.
Really?
So all the breakers were labeled as 5 or 6 calorie per square centimeter. But with the breaker not being programmed, they were actually over 100. And
Exactly.
so that's the difference between, and so we actually did some work because we were trying to figure out how can we communicate that. That's the difference between taking like a pipe sweating torch, for a couple seconds, that's like 5 calorie, that'll burn you, and having a military grade flamethrower at point blank range.
Right.
Like that's the calorie. We calculated the more or less the order of magnitude. So that goes to even the most sophisticated companies. You need to do checks because they thought they had main breaker protection and they didn't.
And not at all.
Anyone working on those breakers thought they were dealing with 5 calories, right? So maybe they had their daily wear. Maybe they have a balaclava and a shield. But they were the risk they were encountering was 20 times that.
Exactly.
So it's not only the little guys; it's the big guys. It's the big guys too.
That is wild, and you wouldn't think it, right? Again, it's ignorance of not knowing an individual. Kind of like your point of talking with Shore earlier. You just assume that they have these great programs. Now, of course, heard horror stories from technicians. Commissioning engineers already been through, made the initial OEM pass through for pad mount transformers, and then they go get NETA tested, and they're not bolted down, and just various, just almost egregious visual failures. And again, it's not enforcing the safety, not understanding that this stuff will kill you on a daily freaking basis, and pretty heavy from that perspective. So, it's just wild. It is absolutely wild, and it definitely needs more. So
you asked me earlier too, and it just occurred to me, one of the biggest oversights in small companies, and that is we don't touch anything electrical. We call people for that.
Absolutely.
And that's a myth that you're not responsible. As an owner of a facility, you are responsible, and you have a responsibility to qualify your contractor and make sure that under OSHA they're qualified electrical workers. So I'd say that in addition to just not even knowing about electrical safety, but thinking that they outsource it to someone who is covering that often is a big oversight.
I could see that being the case. It's somebody else's problem, basically.
Someone else's problem, and there's a lot of smaller shops that don't pay attention. That like a really well-run contractor or NETA shop, they know that they keep current with their training, and a lot of these smaller local electricians don't.
No, and I can see that, and even just in a manufacturing environment, you make widgets. Your focus is on the widget making and the equipment to make the widgets. Yes. It's not the auxiliary support equipment to keep the stuff powered on.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to almost an hour here, Paul, and kind of want to talk to you as the executive. Where are you looking to drive guidance to? Kind of what are the next 5 to 10 years looking like for that? Just a little bit more about you and what you're looking to do.
Well, thank you. We want to build Guidant into being the preferred provider of electrical safety, engineering, reliability, training services to North America's leading companies. That's our North Star. Now, that's going to take a long time because there's some really, great competitors out there.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy to displace great companies. But we think we have a culture and an approach that is working well for us right now. At the risk of being a little bit obnoxious, it's like we care more. We try to make it personal. That's part of that's part of training our techs, that to our customers, our technicians, and our customer service people, and our engineers, that they are guiding power. It's not me. It's not PowerPoints. It's not LinkedIn ads. It is their interaction when they show up at the site. So really investing in them to be the brand ambassador, to deliver that value to, if you think about what are the characteristics that you'd want, let's say you're going to dog sled over the North Slope of Alaska, or do something dangerous. What are the characteristics of a guide? Well, that's who we're trying to be. You want someone who's prepared, who anticipates problems, but they're not an alarmist, right? That it's your journey, not their journey. They're just here to help you on your journey. Right. And we've seen that people don't want to delegate their maintenance, but they want help with their maintenance. And so that's that's our goal. It's to continue growing. We want to continue growing by acquisition and organically. I'd say our approach is balanced. We're absolutely looking for more partners, and we're in discussions all the time with people. It's super important that it aligns and moves them forward in their life, just like our employees. If someone partners with us, we want it to move them forward. If they're retiring, we can help them by monetizing their business. If they're young and they feel like they don't have the capital to grow as fast as they want, or maybe not all the skills, join the team and come be part of it. Others, like you talked to Christopher Casey a few weeks ago, and he was saying he didn't like being the only checkbook. Yeah. It's always his checkbook. Well, we
can all relate with that one.
Yeah, we have capital, and we can bring, for people who want to make an impact faster and bigger than they could make on their own, we can be a great partner for them. And so those are, you got a great picture of the kind of people who are good partners for us. People who either, Brian talked to being in the feast and famine cycle of a small business, or wanting to make an impact greater and learn how to grow beyond where they were, or being 62 and wanting to make sure there was an avenue for his employees to continue to develop.
Absolutely.
And so you get all those different points of view. Mitchell and Lindsay, who we partnered with, they've got a great presence in healthcare. Bobby Lindsay joined our company. His partner, Mark, was substantially older and wanted to retire. So we were able to fund the retirement at a level that he couldn't do on his own. And that was great for Mark, but also Bobby didn't want to run the business alone. He wanted partners. Sense. He wanted to swing for the fences and see what he could do.
Let's grow this thing.
Yeah, and we're really having fun. It is hard, but we're having fun, and we're getting wins in the market, which is really rewarding when the market, recognizes you, and we've been really fortunate in the people that we've been able to bring in, and we've got a really great team spirit that's super supportive.
No, definitely felt like that. And talking to the guys and or the guys from your team, actually, was all the whole panel was all the ex CEOs over there. So, great guys. Definitely, they were inspired with what you're doing over there. I obviously, having met you in person, know your personality, appreciate the approach and outreach and everything, and it's just been pleasurable from that experience. So, I think you're doing something great over there, Paul. And one that I like to ask all the guests before we shut her down is, if you could look back to younger Paul, newly, freshly minted mechanical engineer, what advice would you give yourself from today to then?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that the two things. One, it may not surprise you to learn that I was a pretty high energy driven, young person. What I'd say that the most important lesson I've learned, that if I could tell myself, is that don't try to make people be like you. Play to their strengths. Understand their strengths, what makes them tick, what they're good at, and lean into what they're good at. You get 10 times more by helping someone exceed at something they're already good at than trying to make them better at something they don't like or they're not good at.
Amen.
I would say that is the big takeaway. And it also leads to much richer cultures, more diversity of opinion. More diversity of opinion generates better alternatives, so you make better decisions and you're more successful.
I think that's some damn solid advice to give your younger self, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's Jim Collins' right seat on the bus, making sure you get folks, amplifying that. And I'll share a little quick personal story from it. So it started off, Southern was going to be a lifestyle business, and then clients started coming. We serviced them well. It grew. And then it got to a point where I kind of plateaued. There's only 12, 15 hours that you can accurately work in the day. And so made the pivotal decision to bring in an equity partner for myself. But I'm giving equity. So I gave him part of the company and had a director of ops. And to see the dynamic shift in what we're capable of in our hiring and our outreach and our workflows and everything else. And it was just a matter of understanding your own personal limitations and then finding that person that amplifies that aspect of it and really just doubling down and growing it. So I can personally, through lived experiences, say that that is 100% factual and correct.
I wish that it didn't take me so long to learn it, Micah.
Hey, well, I've got plenty of that gray in there with you, Paul, so I'm right in the same boat. That's why we have wisdom through lived experiences, my friend. So that's kind of how that whole equation works, in my humble opinion. But I thoroughly enjoyed the time. I know you're a busy individual out running and doing all the things that you do. It's not a small undertaking, and just doing it at small scale over here is enough to burn through it. So kudos to you from everything you're building, and thanks for taking the time to hop on with us and sharing the team with us as well. One of the things that I mentioned on that podcast, and I did think was truly awesome and awe-inspiring, and what other leaders should do is like, look, I'm here. Just talk to my people. I'm not telling them what to say. I'm not doing the things. Let actions speak louder than words. And if you're doing business the right way, taking care of people, generous with everything, giving them growth opportunities and all the things that come along with it, then you inevitably, they're not going to have anything bad to say about you. So you're definitely doing things the right way over there, my friend.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Micah. We'll keep trying. Anyways, appreciate the opportunity to advocate for electrical safety and really share that story. And I hope it's inspiring. And I'd say that I love to develop and help. And if anyone out there, wants to talk about what or interact with me on any of the topics we've talked about, I'm on LinkedIn.
I was going to ask. So LinkedIn's the best way to get a hold of you?
That works great. Perfect. Connect with me, drop me a note, and love to do that. And also love to hear what you're doing and promote people that are doing interesting things, particularly around electrical safety and reliability in our business. So if you're an ambitious safety manager, electrical engineer that's doing cool stuff, we want to know about it, and we'd love to get behind and advocate on your behalf. So,
no, that is awesome. Doing work out there, Paul. I love it, and I think you're doing great things. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with us. And until next time, folks, Mike out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more insights, contact info, job offerings, and other content, check out our Linktree sites at Linktree/Micah W. Clay or Linktree/Southern Staffing. We'd love to hear any feedback. And if you know anyone we should highlight, feel free to drop us a message. As always, thanks to those who work tirelessly to keep the lights on. Until next time.